Not every threat in aviation history came from the enemy. Some of the deadliest aircraft ever built never needed an opponent. They were perfectly capable of killing their own pilots all by themselves. Bad engineering, rushed timelines, and designs that were years ahead of what pilots could actually survive. Today, we're counting down some of the most lethal aircraft in history, machines that pilots feared more than the enemy shooting at them. Let's get into it.
Messerschmitt Me 163 Comet. We're starting with the most physically dangerous aircraft ever flown in combat, the Messerschmitt Me 163 Comet. This was the world's first operational rocket-powered fighter, and its rocket engine burned two chemicals that exploded violently on contact with each other, or with basically anything organic, including a human body. Fuel leaks on landing didn't just crash the plane, they dissolved the pilot. Its combat record was unimpressive. Its body count among its own crews was not. Somewhere, a German engineer looked at this design and thought, yes, this seems safe. Lockheed F-104 Starfighter. Next up, the Lockheed F-104 Starfighter, an aircraft built around one obsession: speed. It had razor-thin wings that barely generated lift at low speeds, which is a fun way of saying it turned into a brick the moment it slowed down. Germany alone lost 292 of these aircraft and 116 pilots. Pilots didn't nickname it the Widowmaker out of respect. They named it that out of pure fear. Imagine buying a car that's incredibly fast, but only works properly above 150 miles an hour. That was basically the F-104's personality.
Bell X-2 Starbuster. The Bell X-2 Starbuster was designed to explore speeds above Mach 2, territory no human pilot had ever entered. In 1956, Captain Milburn Apt reached Mach 3.2, becoming the fastest man alive. Minutes later, the aircraft entered an uncontrollable spin, and he died in the same flight. He became the fastest human in history and lost his life in the same afternoon, which might be the most bittersweet record in aviation history.
Convair B-58 Hustler. The Convair B-58 Hustler was America's first supersonic bomber, and also a nightmare to actually fly. Its delta wing was unstable at normal speeds, and the cockpit workload was described by crews as relentless. The Air Force lost 30 of these aircraft in accidents, nearly 30% of the entire fleet. Even its ejection system needed its own capsule just to have a chance of working. This was an aircraft that demanded absolute perfection from its pilots and gave them almost no room for a single mistake. De Havilland DH-108 Swallow. Britain's experimental tailless jet, the DH-108 Swallow, had no horizontal stabilizer, which made it dangerously unstable at high speed. Out of 3 prototypes built, 2 were destroyed in fatal crashes. Jeffrey de Havilland Jr., son of the company's own founder, died when his aircraft broke apart while attempting a world speed record. The company built a plane so dangerous, it took out its own boss's kid. That's a rough quarterly report. The Miles M52 never even got the chance to kill anyone, and honestly, that might be the smartest decision in this entire list. Britain's attempt to break the sound barrier had a razor-edged fuselage and a cockpit so tight that ejecting was basically impossible. The program was canceled specifically because officials worried the pilot simply wouldn't survive if anything went wrong. Sometimes the safest aircraft is the one that never leaves the drawing board. Heinkel He 162 Volksjäger. Germany's last desperate jet fighter, the Heinkel 162 was designed and built in under 90 days near the end of the war, using forced labor and inferior materials. Its wooden tail components would detach mid-flight without warning. This wasn't a case of bad luck. It was a case of skipping quality control entirely because the war was already lost. Several pilots died not from enemy fire, but from their own aircraft simply falling apart around them. Focke-Wulf TA-154. Sticking with wooden aircraft problems, the TA-154 was meant to be Germany's fast answer to the British Mosquito. But when the factory making its special wood glue was bombed, engineers switched to a substitute glue that caused the airframe to delaminate mid-flight.
Several aircraft literally broke apart during testing. The program was scrapped once it became clear the plane was killing more of its own pilots than enemy combat ever would.
Curtiss SB-2C Helldiver arrived with high expectations and immediately let everyone down. It had a dangerous tendency to snap into uncontrolled spins, and pilots gave it the affectionate nickname the Beast, which is not a compliment when you're the one flying it. Over 900 were lost to all causes during the war, plenty of them thanks to the aircraft's own design flaws rather than enemy action. Douglas TBD Devastator. By the time America entered World War II, the Douglas TBD Devastator was already outdated. At the Battle of Midway in 1942, all 15 Devastators from USS Hornet's torpedo squadron were shot down, and only one pilot survived. Flying it into battle wasn't really combat at that point. It was closer to a scheduled appointment with disaster.
Brewster Buffalo. The Brewster Buffalo was outclassed the moment it met Japanese Zero fighters over Malaya and Burma. It was too slow, too heavy, and too underpowered to survive a single serious engagement. One RAF report bluntly called it unsuitable for combat against modern opposition. Interestingly, Finnish pilots actually found success with it against weaker Soviet aircraft, proving that context matters even for a bad plane. Republic F-105 Thunderchief. The F-105 Thunderchief was built as a nuclear strike aircraft, then ended up flying low-altitude conventional missions through intense anti-aircraft fire over Vietnam, a role it was never designed for. The United States lost 334 of them during the war, nearly half of everything ever produced. A perfectly capable aircraft, just used in exactly the wrong kind of fight.
Hawker Typhoon. Britain's early Hawker Typhoon almost got canceled before it ever proved useful. Carbon monoxide from a faulty engine seal leaked straight into the cockpit, quietly knocking pilots unconscious mid-flight. On top of that, the tail assembly sometimes detached entirely with zero enemy involvement required. The aircraft eventually became a solid ground attack platform, but only after a long and painful list of preventable deaths along the way. Ilyushin Il-2 Sturmovik. The Il-2 was one of the most produced aircraft in history, but early single-seat versions left the rear completely undefended, and German fighters figured that out fast. Losses were so severe that Stalin issued a direct warning. Units that lost Il-2s through negligence would face a military tribunal. That's one aggressive way to boost pilot morale. Lavochkin, Gorbunov, Godkov, Lag-3. Soviet pilots had a grim nickname for the Lag-3, calling it the guaranteed varnish coffin, a dark joke about its wooden build and the initials of its designers. Heavy, sluggish, and underpowered, it struggled to climb and struggled to survive against the Luftwaffe. When your own pilots are naming your aircraft after a coffin, that's not exactly a 5-star review.
Northrop XB-35 and YB-49 Flying Wing. The flying wing was a visionary concept decades ahead of its time, but it needed constant pilot input just to stay level. In 1948, a YB-49 crashed during a test flight, killing Captain Glenn Edwards, the man Edwards Air Force Base is later named after. This aircraft's instability wasn't actually solved until fly-by-wire computers arrived decades later. Being ahead of your time doesn't help much if the technology to control you doesn't exist yet. From rocket fighters that could dissolve their own pilots to flying wings that needed computers that didn't exist yet, these aircraft proved that the enemy wasn't always the biggest threat in the sky. Sometimes the most dangerous thing a pilot ever faced was simply climbing into the cockpit. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like and let me know in the comments which dangerous aircraft you want covered next.